Back in March of 2017, I was visiting a friend's place for the first time and noticed this bus sitting out back next to their shed. It is a 1967 International Bus Freighter body that is sitting on the chassis C1500 International truck. I really like vehicles of this era. Their design has character that is reflective of the era they originate. The owner of the vehicle was Paul. He would live in the bus when he was working away from home and drive it back home every so often. The story he told me was that it was heading back home and started to smell smoke. With this bus design, the engine was accessible from the inside of the bus, so he could tell the smoke was coming from the engine and knew he had to pull over. I believe he said that the brakes also appeared to stop working, but being a manual transmission, he was able to slow it down with the gears and bring it to a stop. After the fire was put out, the bus was towed back home and had been sitting there for about 3 years. Paul hadn't gotten around to fixing it due to the nature of the work required. For some reason, I kept thinking about the bus and decided to ask him if he wanted to sell it. I knew it would require a lot of work to get running again, however, in my head, it didn't seem to be that complicated of a job. Paul was happy for it to go to someone he knew, and we agreed on a price of 3,000 Australian dollars. Paul is no longer with us. He passed away a few years later, but his memory lives on in the bus. Once I had the bus delivered to my property, so began the discovery of exactly what needed to be repaired. One of the obvious things is that all the wiring will need to be removed and replaced. Lots of things made of rubber melted, the water hoses were melted in half, and so were the air conditioning hoses. Clearly the first job was to strip the engine bay and remove the engine so it could be further inspected. Here you can see from inside of the bus, the heat from the fire caused the paint to burn on the inside, and you can also see more melted electrical wires. One of the first hurdles is removing the engine, as there is no way to use an engine crane from above without also removing the roof. I mean, perhaps you could remove a window, but that's not something I'm willing to do. So that means the engine needs to come out the front. Luckily, I had a small engine hoist I'd purchased at a garage sale that allowed me to do just that. But it was a bit of a janky process. And that's my dad there who helped me get it out. We left the gearbox behind, and at this point, we had a good idea of what else needed to be removed and replaced. Quickly jumping forward to July of 2017, and you can see everything has been removed, as I'll need to paint the engine bay at some point. So now that the engine is out, I'm able to inspect it further and find out how much of a rebuild is required. It took some research to identify the engine. It appears to be a straight 6-cylinder 282 International petrol, either a silver diamond or black diamond. After doing a compression test on the engine, it does not look too good. It's clearly going to need a full rebuild. On further inspection, I can see there are a few broken parts, the most obvious being the rocker arm shaft. Also, one of the rocker arms is chipped. Finally, the biggest nail in the coffin was the grooves in the cylinder bores. When Paul was originally telling me about the bus, he said that the engine was slow, especially up hills. With all that in mind, I decided that I was going to ditch the engine altogether and find a more powerful replacement, which I will cover in future videos. While on the engine, I mentioned that it was petrol, not diesel. It also ran on LPG, as that's a bit cheaper. I've removed the tank as it needs to be recertified before being used again. The petrol tank itself had a hole in it that needs repairing, so it's also been removed. The front passenger floor was wood and it had rotted out, so I replaced it with some galvanized steel that will be insulated in the future. This is also where the air conditioner lives, so I welded up a proper bracket for it to sit on instead of the piece of wood it was previously on. The last major thing that was damaged was the electrical wiring, as seen earlier. This is everything from the dash, which I've disconnected and labelled for future reference. These connected to the front dash with the speedometer and relevant gauges. On further inspection, it has melted the rear and also cracked it. I was able to easily source a replacement dash on a Facebook group, so I've got that ready for the future. Of course, the most important thing I haven't mentioned yet is Randy. He loves getting inside the bus, no matter what time of day or night it is. If I'm down on the ground working under the bus, he loves to come up and say hello with a big lick and cuddle. Well, that's it for the first video in this series. I hope you liked it, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Until next time, bye!